Good evening and welcome to our public meeting. We're really pleased to be able to host this meeting in person this year despite the restrictions in numbers, and also to be in the lovely setting of Campbell Park, which just last year was awarded Grade 2 listed status from Historic England in great recognition of its beautiful design. So we hope you'll be able to take in some of the stunning views whilst you're here this evening. I'd also like to welcome those that are viewing from the comfort of their own homes, as we are live streaming this event on Facebook this evening too. So you will see some cameras dotted around, and those will be focused on the speakers this evening. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about the format. As we're still under a period of COVID restrictions and to keep the meeting safe, we have capped the numbers of attendees and we have a one-way system on the use of the building. Soft drinks are inside in the function room, and we would just kindly ask that you do wear a mask just while you're inside the building. You don't need to wear them outside or under the marquee unless you feel more comfortable to do so. This evening, our Chief Executive, David Foster, will be talking about the performance of the Trust over the past year and some of our exciting plans for the year ahead, as outlined in our annual report, a copy of this document that you will see at the tables at the back and in the function room. We're also going to be introducing Zoe Raven, our Chair. We have an update for you on Great Linford Manor Park from James Cairncross and Ellie Broad. And we're also very pleased this evening to be launching our brand new landscape proposition, Milton Keynes Inspirational Landscapes, which will be presented by Steve Revel-Darton. Copies of this are also available at the back and in the function room. And finally, Rob Reiki, our Operations Director, will be giving a talk on how we manage our trees. There's going to be an opportunity at the end to ask any questions that you'd like to put forward to our management team and our staff. We have plenty of staff here this evening, so although it sounds like quite an action-packed agenda, we're looking to be wrapped up by 7:30, and then there will be half an hour at the end where you can catch any of us if you want to speak to us personally or ask us any questions offline. So that just leaves me to say I really hope you enjoy this evening, and I will now hand you over to our Chief Executive, David Foster.
Thank you, Hannah. I've got to remember to do this. There we are. So, welcome everybody, and welcome everybody at home, wherever you are. That's quite exciting, isn't it? I think I'm talking to the world. We host this meeting each year to provide you, the people of Milton Keynes, with the opportunity to find out about what we've done and what we do, and to ask us questions. So do have a think about anything you'd like to ask us at the end. But it's all part of our belief that we should be open and transparent about what we do and what we do here. We might own all these parks, 6,000 acres of them, but after all, these are your parks, and we're only really looking after them for the people of Milton Keynes and for future generations. So it's absolutely right that we should be completely transparent about what we're doing and why we're doing it. I'll just say a little bit. I think most of you are familiar faces, so most of you already know about the Parks Trust, but I'll just spend a quick moment just telling you about our model. It's surprising how many people still think that, well, we must be part of the council. People who quite surprise me. They still think we're part of the council. But we're not. We're an independent charity. That's why we were established here by the Newtown Development Corporation back in 1992. We took on most of the strategic green space that the Development Corporation had built, and we were given an endowment of around about £20 million worth of commercial property, the idea being that the rent from that commercial property would pay for the maintenance of the parks forever, and so the taxpayer in Milton Keynes wouldn't have to cover the cost of the park's maintenance, and they wouldn't be there competing with education and bus services and old people's services and the rest of it. And that's by and large what has happened since 1992. The rent from our commercial investments has paid for the maintenance of the park. and it still does, and hopefully it will do forever if we manage it right and if we manage the parks right. 2020-21, that's the year that I'm really telling you about, because that's the year of our financial report. That started in April 2020 and ran through to end of March 2021. Well, I remember quite clearly in March 2020 agreeing the budget with the board for the next year, all the things we were going to do and how much we were going to spend, and then the global pandemic hit really suddenly. Yeah, I don't know if you all remember that point, but for us, the speed at which it happened, and within a couple of weeks we were taking a red pen to our budget and cutting it very, very dramatically. And then a few weeks later we cut it a bit more, and a few weeks later we asked the staff whether we could cut their wages and their pay and the benefits and things. You know, it really was extremely challenging, very serious, and a really difficult time for us. And we were really concerned about our income and our tenants. You know, most of our income coming from commercial property, we were very concerned as to whether our tenants would be able to pay the rent. And if they couldn't, then the parks would not get maintained, you know, to be dramatic about it. And the staff wouldn't have been able to be employed here. Well, as it happened, we budgeted for the worst, and it didn't turn out too bad. The government stepped in with the furlough scheme and various grants. All our environmental education work had to stop. Our events had to stop. Our volunteering had to stop. So those staff all could be furloughed because there really wasn't a lot of work for them to do. So we saved a lot of cost there, and the poor staff had to sit around and find things to do. But generally we came through it okay. Things weren't anywhere near as bad as we had feared, and we were able to reinstate quite a lot of the work that we had originally planned. By about the third, certainly the halfway through the year, or 2/3 through the year, we were able to get back to normal, I suppose, in many respects. And you'll see in our annual report that financially we did okay as well. We were expecting about £1 million loss. As it turned out, we didn't lose anything really overall. Our rent was hit, but that was more than made up for with the grants that we got in. Our portfolio of financial investments was revalued and increased in value by about 8 million. The previous year it had decreased in value very significantly. We had some new endowments for some new parks that we took on. We sold a couple of small bits of land, not because of the pandemic, but because we wanted to work with the council on the economic benefits that would bring to the city. And so overall, last year we actually made a healthy increase in our net asset position, bringing our total endowment pot, this is the pot of money that we've got invested that we have to live on, the trust has to live on forever. That now stands at £129 million. So we're getting closer to our target, which of investment, which is about £140 million. And once we get there, then we will be able to kind of relax and let the money flow in and manage our parks without having to worry too much about making money. So last year financially was okay for us, but it was a heck of a challenge for everybody. We managed to do some big improvements at the same time. So the biggest project we were doing, and we're still working on, is at Willen Lake. Hopefully you've seen the new water sports building and cafe and restaurant going up there. Splendid building. We're going to be opening that in a few weeks' time. We've also done a very significant project at Great Linford Manor, which is still ongoing, which you're going to hear a bit about a bit later. At Willen, we've put in a much bigger play area, which will be opening in a few weeks' time, in August, we hope. The other thing to say about the Willen building is that it's all fully accessible, so we've not scrimped on that. It was very tempting to start cutting things out when the pandemic hit, but we haven't done. We've managed to keep faith with the original design, so it's a fully accessible building with a change in places toilet. Some of you will know what that means, but it's a very accessible toilet with a hoist and everything else, which we think public spaces should have. And it's got a lift and everything else. We've been working with the Centre for Integrated Living, the Milton Keynes SIL as it's called, on that. They've given us lots of advice on how to make that building more accessible, or very accessible, and they're also now encouraging us to do a lot more in the parks. The parks were always designed to a very high standard of accessibility back in the day. Well, now they need to be, there's a few more things that need to be done to make them really accessible on today's terms. So we're going to be doing a lot more of that work here, starting with Campbell Park. And tomorrow is Disability Awareness Day. I don't know if you knew that. So we've got an event, as we do each year, up at the Rose, where there is a disability pillar up there. So we've got a nice event up there to celebrate Disability Awareness Day and to raise awareness of that. Tomorrow at midday, free of charge. Go along if you've got a spare moment. And I think most of you would agree with me that the parks during lockdown were really appreciated. It was so rewarding for us to see that, to see, social media particularly, but, just nice letters that we got and emails from people saying just how much they'd appreciated the parks. And anecdotally, not just anecdotally, because we actually got some counters in some of our parks, but we saw that the significant increase in the number of people using our parks, and you could see it by the amount of litter as well. The amount of litter wasn't just a factor of the number of people, it was the fact that restaurants were closed and people were desperate to go out and eat and share food with other people, so they brought all their food and picnics to the park. So that was quite a challenge for us. The increase in litter, and it still is. I mean, I don't think the numbers have really dropped off, and I think a lot of people have discovered parks in Milton Keynes that probably wouldn't have discovered them before. I guess that's been a plus point of the pandemic. Our rangers were under huge pressure with the visitor numbers, and to a certain extent the antisocial behaviour and the litter. So we've had to recruit more rangers, and we're also now recruiting 2 enforcement officers who will actually have certain powers given to them by the police and by the council to actually deal with the antisocial behaviour in some of our parks. 2 new projects we were really pleased to start. Remembrance Walk. Oh, I'm meant to be doing the clicking, aren't I? Sorry, folks. Emma usually does this for me, but not this year. There's the lovely building at Willen Lake. There's Disability Awareness Day pillar. Oh, that one I must just tell you, people love this. We mowed an extra wide strip alongside the footpaths. To be honest, I think we've always done that, but we did it a bit more. And people really loved that, so they could socially distance as they walked through the park. Here's Remembrance Walk. Anyway, this is at Newlands. This is the strip of land that runs down from Campbell Park here, down to Willen Lake. There was a double row of chestnuts down there, which were all dying, diseased. So we've replaced those and put an avenue of lime trees down there. And we're calling it Remembrance Walk, and there is an opportunity for people, if they want to, subscribe to it. We're going to put benches in there, there's going to be wildflowers, there's a pond going in, and quite a bit more planting to go in over the years. So it's a place where people can use it for remembrance activity, to remember a loved one for whatever, in whatever way they wish. So that was quite a nice thing. And at Middleton, here we are at Middleton, there's a great big area of land at Middleton. We tend to ignore it. It seems like a bit of background landscape, but actually it's a very significant park right in the middle of Middleton, and it's lovely. And we've decided to give that a bit more of its own identity. And we've done a lot of planting there, and we're going to do more. We're calling it a wood meadow. Yeah, so it's not a wood, it's not a meadow, it's a wood meadow. But both these projects really are largely in response to the groundswell of public opinion that more trees should be planted. It's not just in Milton Keynes people are saying that, they're saying it all over the country. The Queen has even got in on the act. Next year we've got Jubilee planting again, which, I mean, we're all a bit jaundiced about that. You know, we don't necessarily need a lot more trees. It's not necessarily the best way to save the planet or to stop the ecological crisis that's happening in this country. But we found these two areas where we could plant more trees, so we wanted to go along with it. But more trees is not necessarily the answer. We're all so aware of trees being planted and then never looked after. And that is really what I fear will happen next year with the Jubilee tree planting project. But I'm not really meant to say that, am I? Francesca will wrap my knuckles. But biodiversity for us is a really important part of our work. I don't think we've done as much as we would have liked to in the last year. But I have to show you this picture of the long-eared owl because it's just magnificent. This was at Lymphadlakes Nature Reserve. Apparently they used to visit there quite a lot in when 2018 or so, I think was the last time we'd seen them there. And so this one was caught by the bird ringers who are bird ringing there every year. Magnificent creature. So yes, that's the owl. What's the next one? Oh no, while I'm talking about Lymphadlakes Nature Reserve, I must just mention Gordon Redford, who was our head ranger here at the time I arrived, which was 18 years ago. And Gordon was a fantastic guy, but he sadly passed away a few weeks ago. Those of you that knew him will know he was absolutely a real authority on moths. And spent much of his spare time after he retired from here trapping moths and identifying moths and getting very excited about moths. And he was a lovely, lovely chap. So we were very sad to hear of his passing, and I know he'll be very much missed, and we're going to do something in memory of Gordon up at Lymphadlakes Nature Reserve in a few months' time. Our events programme is really getting back in full swing now, and it's boosted this year by the International Festival, which is actually underway now. Hope you've all realised that. There are some brochures at the back. This is what it looks like, the International Festival brochure. So I really encourage you to pick up one of those. There's some great things going on this year, as there is every time the festival's on. Just over the road here, there's an event that I went to. It's an event. It's an installation, we artists say. It's an installation over the road where you go, put on headphones and go around a trail, and there's a special music track with a story being played to you at various stations around that bit of Campbell Park. And it's absolutely lovely. I can really recommend it. It slows you right down. It's like going on a canal boat. It really takes you back, and you're forced to sit there, and it's only half an hour. It's a nice thing to do in your lunch hour. So I'd recommend that, but lots of other great stuff going on in the festival. I'm looking forward to the, what's it called? The Moon. It's got a name. I must get the name. Museum of the Moon. Bob, you're a mine of information. The Museum of the Moon, which is going to be in the Tree Cathedral. So it's a 7-metre diameter moon hanging suspended from the lovely trees in the tree cathedral with a original soundtrack being played. So that will be another sort of hippie event, but I think it will be... You'll love it, Alan. I think it will be really worth going to. But there's lots of other stuff. There's comedy going on here in the park, orchestras playing, there's a slapstick picnic. You know, there's a lot of really great stuff. So get that brochure and come along to some of those events. Our outdoor learning programme is back in full swing. Really encouraging that the schools are not just forcing the kids to catch up on their reading and writing, they're actually taking them out. So it's wonderful that. So we're absolutely full to capacity with school visits and school trips down at Willen Lake, but also in the rest of our parks. All the primary schools in Milton Keynes walking to their local parks, secondary schools coming out for more serious curriculum-based activities, and even adult learning. So lots of great stuff going on in terms of our outdoor learning programme. And of course at that level, that age, tree tots as we call it, that's happening every week, I think. Every week. Tree tots happens at Howe Park Wood and other places. And our volunteers are back in full swing as well. 215 dedicated volunteers. But even during the lockdown, a lot of those volunteers went out without us having to organise them. And during the year, they did 4,500 hours of activity, volunteer activity for us, which is absolutely fantastic. Helps so much. A lot of it is litter picking. Some of it is identifying problems that we can then, there are eyes and ears on the ground, so we can go and fix them straight away. And I must mention this chap, Andrew. Where is he? Oh, here's our volunteers. Here's Andrew. Andrew was named Green Flag Volunteer of the Year. Now, that's not just a Milton Keynes award, that's a national award. So one of our volunteers won the National Green Flag Volunteer of the Year award. And he's a great guy. He does such a lot for us. So, looking ahead. I'm running out of time, aren't I, Hannah? Looking ahead, what am I looking forward to? Well, the facilities at Thurston Lake are at last being built. Do you recall we've been talking about this for a couple of years, got planning permission a couple of years ago. They're actually coming out of the ground now. There's a big steel frame up there, so there's a new cafe going in at Thurston Lake with a really quite exciting adventure golf course with dinosaurs. I'm looking forward to the restoration works at Great Linford Manor that you're going to hear about being completed. Can't see it. Have I gone past it? Yeah. This is important because you'll be interested in this, Brian. The almshouses we're hoping the council is going to agree to transfer those to the Parks Trust. So we will take over those almshouses, which will be great for us because it will mean that we've got some buildings in that park from which our volunteers can be based. The canal electric community boat can operate from there as well. And we'll also be able to have some toilets and small low-key refreshment facilities in that park, because our ambition is to try and, in our major parks, try and get some toilets and refreshment facilities in most of them, which will take a long while, and we've got to do it in an inventive way, but that's quite a good way of doing it, repurposing those old buildings which are pretty dilapidated, and we'll bring them back into good use. So we're very hopeful that that's all going to be completed in the next couple of weeks by the council and transfer that across to us. We should complete phase 2 of our work at Willen. Phase 3 is obviously the next phase. We've done 1, we're nearly done 2. Phase 3 is dealing with what I call Shantytown. It's the sort of the bit behind the gym there, which is a mess of porta cabins. All our doing, well, some of it is Jamie's doing when he used to run the place, but all these porta cabins need, it's time for a good clear out there, and the boatyard there, we will be able to redevelop that and put that to some good use, as well as making better use of the car park there. So that will be phase 3. So that's a big a big job, lots of planning and consultation to go on there. We're also looking forward this year to doing a lot more work on diversity and inclusion. And we're doing a lot of that with our community ambassadors, which is a group of about 40 people from different communities in Milton Keynes who are helping us become more diverse and more inclusive in our work, which is something that's really important, and our board want us to spend a lot more time and effort on that. I'm looking forward to new green spaces being handed over. Every year when I stand up at this public meeting, someone asks me, when is that going to be handed over? Quite often they ask me, when is Oak Grove going to be handed over? And it's still not handed over. There's a big chunk of landscape in Oak Grove that's got to come across to us and be transferred to us from the developer there. And it's still not happened. Various reasons, most of it bureaucratic. But we're looking forward to a lot more green spaces coming across to us, especially on the western expansion area. And on the subject of new green spaces, Hannah mentioned our new publication, which is at the back there. MK's, we've called it MK's Inspirational Landscapes. It's about our vision for how we see new parks and open spaces being created in Greater Milton Keynes as the city expands up to 2050. We think there are some important lessons from the past and the present to learn, so we've tried to put that in a form of a prospectus, if you like, as to how we think new green space should be created going forward. And we're very optimistic that the council will adopt a lot of that and put it into their planning obligations. So have a look at that. It's only just come out today. Congratulations to everyone who managed to get it ready for today. But we're going to promote that in a series of events around the city over the next couple of months. The other thing I'm looking forward to in 12 months' time is my retirement. So, yeah, I've been here 19 years. Never thought that would happen. Did you, Brian? Brian here recruited me in 2003, and I think he thought I might last a couple of years. But it's been 19 fantastic years. So yeah, so I'm off. A new person is to be recruited. The plans have been put in place for that by the board, and hopefully someone will be appointed before Christmas, ready to start next June with a bit of an overlap with me. So I shall finish now and thank everybody for the wonderful work you've done, all my colleagues, all the volunteers, and trustees. It's been a really tough year for everybody, but we've managed to achieve a hell of a lot. So it's only through your commitment and dedication that we've done that. And I'll just ask Zoe now to come forward. Zoe is our new chair. Zoe took over from Richard Foreman in December, and Zoe's going to tell us a little bit about the role of the trustee and the board. So, thank you very much. Okay, you don't need pictures, I don't think.
No pictures, and this will be very short and sweet. And if some of you are getting a sense of deja vu, it's because I was standing in for Richard the last time I was here talking. So I was talking as a deputy chair before, but as a chair from the beginning of this year, which is very exciting for me anyway. I've been on the board since 2013, so quite a while, and got involved with the trust because I hugely admired it, really enjoyed the green spaces in Milton Keynes, and I've got a personal interest in the environmental education side of it. Some of you might know I run Acorn Early Years Foundation, which is also a charity and social enterprise with 9 nurseries in Milton Keynes. So that's been my involvement on the board, and we do have a great board. We're very, very fortunate. I've probably said this before. We never have any difficulty finding good trustees. In fact, our problem is sometimes limiting the number on the board because we have an exceptionally large board, although it has reduced a bit. But the board is there to give strategic direction to the team. We have an excellent senior leadership team under David's leadership. And we're there to make sure that we're doing the right things and that they're being done in the right way. We've also just had a governance review. We have those every 3 years, an external governance review. So that's always an opportunity to refresh and review how well we're doing as a board, whether we're doing our job properly. We're always developing, we're always learning and reflecting on what we could do better. I'm keeping this very short because all I really want to say is to recognise David and his team for what a fantastic job they've done in really difficult circumstances over the last year. I mean, I think I'm sure everybody here will have recognised the benefits of being outdoors, being in natural environments, both for physical well-being but also mental health. But that has come with its challenges, as David has mentioned, with the additional litter and antisocial behaviour. And they've risen to that challenge so superbly well. It's been inspirational for us as a board, and I feel really privileged to be part of that board. The task of filling David's shoes is very daunting. They are a huge pair of shoes to fill, and we are going to commit to it with great seriousness and application. So we will be working very hard on that to make sure we get absolutely the right person. But next summer, we will be celebrating 30 years. So we will make sure we give them a good send-off in a year's time. And we're very pleased that we've got a whole year left to finish on a high and not in the middle of a COVID pandemic, because it's been a difficult year, but a really rewarding year to see how well everybody's done. So I'd like to thank all the members of staff, my fellow members on the board, but especially David. Thank you.
Thank you, Zoe. Now I'd like to welcome up James Cairncross and Ellie Broad, who will be talking to you about our project at Great Linford Manor Park.
Hello. Let's see if I can flick on to the next one. There we go. So Ellie and I are managing the Heritage Lottery funded project at Great Linford Manor. The manor itself, it's quite a modestly sized Georgian manor, sat in much of its original landscape in Great Linford, in the north of the city. Like most houses of its era, it's been quite altered over the years, but the current layout, I think it almost looks like a doll's house, sort of Georgian design. It's appeared like that since the mid-18th century. Next slide. Also on the site, directly opposite, are these twin pavilions in the Palladian style. These are quite unusual because they would have normally, in a Palladian design, been attached to the side of the manor, but these ones are facing it directly opposite, and they hide a working area of the park, so it's a barn and some working buildings. Also in the view of the manor are the almshouses, which David mentioned earlier, which were built to house some of the poor of the parish, and the schoolhouse in the middle. That's the bigger building that you can see there. And St Andrew's Church just in the background there, which is obviously much, much older and dominates the landscape, sat on an escarpment. Of course, no manor house would be complete without an appropriate landscape that should follow the latest fashion. The manor's private walled gardens at the back stayed quite formal, but the rest of the surrounding landscape was remodelled into the English landscape style, which was the sort of capability brown design that you see around, although on this site it's in the more intimate style of Richard Woods, although we don't know who was responsible. And this design includes formal cascading water gardens, a pleasure garden, an area known as the Wilderness, which you'd imagine would be quite a wild area, but is the complete opposite, quite a formal area to parade around. And that included a classically styled folly summer house, all of which commanded views across the wider parkland and the Ouse Valley beyond. The manor stayed in private hands until the establishment of the new city, when it was purchased by the Development Corporation. In the 20th century, the manor was lived in by tenants, and they used a lot of the formal landscape for sheep and cattle grazing, right up to the front door of the manor. And like most country estates, after World War I, there was quite a rapid decline in fortunes. So when the corporation took the landscape and buildings on, they found them in quite poor condition. The original plan of the corporation was to use the manor and the grounds as an arts centre. So they embarked on restoration of the estate buildings, and the grounds were modified to include some visitor parking, a sports pitch, and they did some engineering works, among others, to the pond cascades. Sadly, the arts centre turned out not to be sustainable. I think some funding was pulled, and the manor was sold again to a private owner. First it was used as a recording studio, and then later again as a private residence. The pavilions, almshouses and the working buildings are now owned by Milton Keynes Council. Fingers crossed that we can get the almshouses. And they were let to a smaller arts centre, while the surrounding landscape came to us at the Parks Trust. So the park has always been maintained very, very well, I'd say, by the Parks Trust. But it's always been in the style of the wider network of linear parks. So if you were to walk to Great Linford Manor Park from here now, you can get there without leaving the Parks Trust park network, which is quite remarkable. We think that the old buildings, which I've shown, are quite plain to see. They're obviously historic, but the historic landscape is a lot less easy to read unless you know what you're looking at. The bare bones of an 18th century landscape are there, with layers of additional work. Things like the canal and the railway came later. But to bring them back into good condition and secure their fortune, their future, needs quite a significant amount of money. Hence the lottery bid. So we applied for the Lotteries Parks for People fund, and we were successful with that. Granted a little bit over £3 million. That's not just for site work, that's also a community programme as well, hence Ellie's role. And the biggest impact that you'll see is in the water gardens area. So the corporation's cascades were built with, let's say, unsympathetic modern materials, and we've since found not particularly well. All of them had failed, so the water levels in all three of the ponds were significantly lower than they should have been. We started removing trees in February of 2020, and then obviously we all know what happened just after that. But we managed to get the contractors appointed and on site in October of 2020. They're there for a year, so they're planned to end around October this year. Yeah, so this is after we removed the trees and drained the pond. Believe it or not, that's the pond drained. There's just a little skim of water over all the silt that was in there. This is one of the about 1,000 photos on my phone that the contractor sends me via WhatsApp at 2 in the morning sometimes. And here they're building the new engineering structure between the two ponds. Next slide. Yeah. So that structure was of engineering brick, but it will all be shrouded in the local limestone, Blisworth limestone, which is a sort of a Cotswoldy stone. It may be a little bit paler, but very nice in the sunshine, and it matches all the other buildings from all the other eras, which is brilliant. Elsewhere on the site, we're improving the accessibility around the park. So in this slide, we've got some new footpaths going into the wilderness area, and they're sinuous, windy paths which take you on a journey around with new flower beds. It'll be a little bit like a scene from Bridgerton as you parade through. And at the Memorial Hall, we've put in some new facilities. I've not got a photo of the car park, it's not that exciting, but we've improved that, made it much more easy to use, a bit safer to use. And we've built a new play area for very small children. because we understand that there are not that many facilities on site for younger kids. And of course, it's not just about the work on site. I said we've got the grant for just over £3 million, but of equal importance to both us and the lottery is the community engagement side, hence Ellie's role. So I shall hand over.
Thank you, James. So I'm Ellie. I'm the Community Engagement and Activity Coordinator for the National Lottery Heritage Fund Project, which is a very long job title, but pretty much sums up what I do, which is my job to tell people all about the project, to communicate with local stakeholders and to provide opportunities for engagement in the park. I'm going to give you a brief update now on what we've been doing community-wise in the project so far. So at the start of the Heritage Fund project, to help us inform the park's design, we consulted with local residents and park stakeholders and have remained in regular contact with them throughout the project. We're now working more closely than ever with the different organisations based in and around the park, so that's St Andrew's Church, Milton Keynes Arts Centre, the Parish Council and the Memorial Hall. And we are delighted to work with the Friends of Great Linford Manor Park, some of whom are here today, who are a group of local residents who volunteer with activities in the park and organise community events. They are also our ambassadors for the Heritage Fund project, taking a key role in leading regular guided walks and researching the park's history. To date, we've hosted numerous activities in the park, with many now taking place on a regular basis. So each month, the Friends of Great Linford Manor Park lead guided walks, focusing on the heritage landscape that James has described today. Recently, we've expanded these to twice monthly to cater for increased demand, and it has been wonderful to see local knowledge and appreciation for the park's heritage growing. Thank you very much to the Friends Group for your hours of historical research and the time you give freely to making these walks such a success. We have also been working with St Andrew's Church on the Five Ways Cafe initiative, and this is a community cafe which is held in the church twice a month for people living with dementia, their carers and their relatives. The Friends of Great Linford Manor Park lead the attendees on an accessible guided walk of the parkland. And this enables people with dementia to explore a new place or somewhere that they're already familiar with in a safe setting and to enjoy a shared experience with their loved ones. The cafe has also caught the attention of the Open University, who have been carrying out observations for their research into the barriers and facilitators for walking for people with dementias and their carers. Their research has recently been submitted to an academic journal, which is called Health and Social Care in the Community. And we're delighted to be able to support this vital research in one of our parks, and we look forward to seeing the cafe grow. Pictured here are the Friends of Great Linford Manor Park in full historic costume, beautifully handmade by one of the members. And now each September we join the National Celebration for Heritage Open Days to lead guided walks of the park. We were very fortunate with the weather, as you can see in the photo, last year, and the COVID restrictions which were relaxed in the summer last year, which meant we could lead over 100 people on socially distanced guided walks across the 3-day event. This year we're joining with Milton Keynes Arts Centre and St Andrew's Church in a site-wide celebration for Heritage Open Days, and this event is taking place across the weekend of the 17th to 19th of September. And it also celebrates the building works coming to a close at the park. We hope to see lots of local residents there. But no summary of the project so far would be complete without mentioning the impact of COVID-19. Well, at Great Linford, we adapted to the changing situation. We created self-guided trails for families around the park, such as the Valentine's Trail, an Easter egg hunt, and a Christmas fairy doors trail. These were incredibly popular, so we'll probably be doing those again this year. We also limited group activities to just 6 people, with a requirement to pre-book. And the exotic trees in the Arboretum are also now labelled, which adds interest to a self-guided walk. What's more, our visitor counters, as David mentioned earlier, showed that the park was busier than ever as people made the most of daily walks. We are now looking forward to an expanded activities programme at Great Linford, now that COVID-19 restrictions are easing. Finally, I want to mention the hard work that the Friends of Great Linford Manor Park do. Aside from guided walks, the Friends meet once a month to help with park maintenance tasks, such as clearing vegetation for the historic features, and recently they have taken on the maintenance of the little walled garden to the rear of the almshouses. It's shaping up beautifully and will be a great place for community engagement activities. The Friends have also been working with Buckinghamshire Archaeological Society to excavate a stretch of the ha-ha to the rear of the manor house. A ha-ha is a wall set into a ditch that deterred animals from entering the manor's formal gardens. These excavations are progressing well, and we're looking forward to welcoming visitors to the dig on Wednesday the 21st of July for a family open afternoon. So as you can see, all in all, we've had a busy and productive year, and there's lots more exciting initiatives still to come. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much to James and Ellie. And now I'd like to welcome up Steve Revel-Darton, who's going to be talking about the Milton Keynes Landscape Proposition document.
Good evening. I'm Steve Revel-Darton, and my job here at the Trust is the Green Infrastructure Development Manager. So since joining the Trust, I've spent the last couple of years working closely with Milton Keynes Council and various developers through the design, development and implementation of new green infrastructure and its subsequent adoption by the Trust. So this green infrastructure includes parklands, spaces for recreation and play, areas for biodiversity, habitats, wildlife corridors and surface water attenuation and drainage features. So why have we decided to launch this document that we've got here, and we've got copies for you here this evening? Well, during this time, we've seen examples of both the good and the not so good delivery of parkland and open spaces through the recent expansion areas in the east and west of the city. And as we assisted Milton Keynes Council in developing the green infrastructure elements of the 2050 strategy, it became more apparent that we, as the Trust and guardians of Milton Keynes strategic parklands and open spaces, should be setting out our own vision for how we see the future development of Milton Keynes. So as Milton Keynes expands, we want to ensure all future areas of the city benefit from the same extent and quality of green space that is found in the established areas of the city. Our aim is to ensure that the benefits of our open spaces in contributing to the success of Milton Keynes continues, including providing the space and opportunity for people to enjoy outdoor recreation, providing a home for our wildlife, protecting habitats and increasing biodiversity, and for conserving and enhancing heritage assets, such as the Great Linford Manor Park that you've just all been hearing about, and for the management of flood risk and surface water attenuation, amongst other things. So we've attempted to capture our vision for the future green and open spaces in Milton Keynes in the form of this document, Milton Keynes Inspirational Landscapes, Now and Forever. And what we've aimed to do here is create an advocacy document for a landscape-first approach to the development and growth of Milton Keynes. So, who is it for? One slide ahead. No, I'm not. I'm missing a slide. How very confusing. Anyway, who is it for? It's for Milton Keynes Council. It's there to support the MK 2050 strategy and add a crucial additional supporting layer to that strategy. And it's also to support their existing policies of Plan MK and the future policies of its next iteration. It's for developers, to providing them with sound principles to guide and shape their plans and to assist in our discussions and conversations with them. It's for planners and landscape architects to guide them in developing their plans and designs for the growth of Milton Keynes. It's for other stakeholders in the development process to demonstrate our thinking and our ambition. And perhaps most importantly, it's for you, it's for the general public. We hope that it's accessible, thought-provoking and appealing, and something that you can all get behind and champion with us. So the document itself is principle-led proposition for the future development of Milton Keynes Landscapes. And with the knowledge and expertise of our staff and trustees, we've developed our vision around 5 key principles. So these are the need for a new green infrastructure strategy, landscape-led planning, joining up open spaces, to learn from the past, and ensuring future stewardship. So now we'll just take a moment to have a look at each of those in turn. So firstly, the need for a new green infrastructure strategy. So the designation, design and delivery of landscape and green infrastructure, we believe, should be led by and accord with a citywide strategy. And by that, we're talking about a holistic strategy that takes in the whole of the city and its surroundings to deliver the green infrastructure that's required by Milton Keynes as it grows in population. Secondly is landscape-led planning. So we believe that landscape is at the heart of shaping new and great places, and nowhere in the UK demonstrates this better than Milton Keynes. It's perhaps the single greatest strategic scale landscape project ever undertaken in the UK. So we want to ensure that the planning of new landscapes is done holistically and at the strategic level, with parkland landscaping schemes designed to embrace and celebrate existing features in the landscape, and also to provide high quality interconnected green infrastructure that is delivered early ahead of the residential development. So as a part of that principle, we've developed this idea that you see in the plan here, which is that of the Greater MK Green Grid. So this is a conceptual plan that begins to propose a landscape-based approach to the future growth of Milton Keynes. Following on from that, principle 3 is the idea of joining up open spaces. So as Milton Keynes grows, we must ensure that the green spaces and water bodies continue as a single interconnected network across the city. So by that we're talking about wildlife corridors, watercourses, hedgerows, parklands and routes for active travel that must be interconnected and link also with the landscape beyond Milton Keynes boundaries. Principle 4 is to learn from the past. So the green infrastructure in Milton Keynes network was planned and designed according to sound principles that have proven to be effective as the city's matured. Now obviously the way that development is planned and delivered in Milton Keynes today is now very different to those early days of the city. However, through from the ambitious approach to landscape-led planning through to the finer details, the key underlying principles remain as important now as when the city was first established. And then finally, principle 5 is ensuring future stewardship. So our parklands, open spaces and green infrastructure, water bodies must be cared for and maintained in perpetuity. And this requires the advanced planning of maintenance arrangements and management. And we also see this as an offer of how we can use our knowledge and experience to guide others through this process. So our job now is to promote this document and the principles it contains within it, and utilise this tool to aid and support our role in the growth of Milton Keynes and its landscapes. There's a copy of the document here for you this evening, and we'll hope that you'll read it in full. And we very much look forward to hearing your thoughts and feedback on this. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve. And we now have Rob Reekey, our Operations Director, who's going to talk to us about how we manage our trees.
Thank you, Hannah. Good evening, all. Lovely to see you. Difficult circumstances, but it's great that you've all made the effort to come and join us tonight. Right. We at the Trust, over the years, are aware of questions and a general interest regarding our tree management. So tonight, I want to present to you a brief oversight into our tree work that is undertaken by the Parks Trust. So just some key points. First, a history lesson. The initial planting in Milton Keynes, carried out predominantly by Milton Keynes Development Corporation, was at particularly high densities. Now this was to cater for a new city that was probably the biggest building site in Europe at the time, and try to very quickly green up the city and attract people and businesses into the city, which was absolutely fantastic, and the architects and the planners admirably achieved all they needed to. But in the long term, when you're sometimes planting plants 4 or 5 to the square metre, in the long term that is not sustainable, and so as time moves on, that tree landscape needs work upon it. One of the key things we do is respacing or thinning works. Now, again, one of the great advantages the Development Corporation left us with a big palette of trees to actually manage, and so the trick or the skill for us is when we're carrying out thinning or respacing is to retain the better trees, the more appropriate trees for the final canopy or the trees that are going to be there well into the future. And I'm talking about 100, 200 years and beyond. If done properly, the tree thinning also lets light into the understory and lets that flourish. Now, we've all been in coniferous woodlands at a time where they're growing quite densely, and if left like that, there's very little underneath. Now, what we want to try and achieve, and we are, is understories and second-class trees, second-age class trees underneath that, so you get layers rather than just foliage at the top. So that's our plan. We're getting to the end of the first stages where the high intensity work is hopefully going to be completed in the next couple of years, and then as the trees slow down and settle and we get the spacings we wanted, the work will be less intensive and we can then start looking to really develop the understories. We've also got to look at the boundary, and particularly the boundary with our neighbours to the rear of the landscapes. From tail to head, there's 135 miles or more of grid road. That's like from here to Barnsley, and that's got, including the parks, approximately 10,000 neighbours adjoining our land. So trees that were planted 40 years ago might not necessarily now be appropriate to their location. So we have to look very closely at those boundaries. If we left things as they are, we would soon get into trouble with subsidence and general nuisance to our neighbours. So we want to try and be a good neighbour, but we understand that this can be sometimes sensitive work and work that people might not always get. But we do try and look at those rear sections, and I can talk about more detail perhaps afterwards if people want to know more about that detail. We've also got the management of pests and diseases. This has become more of an issue, especially with climate change, and more pests and diseases make their home in the UK. One of the big ones we're dealing with at the moment, I have got some slides, but I'll show those at the end, is ash dieback. Now, ash dieback is a fungal disease, and across areas of Europe and the UK that it is ravaged, up to 95% of the ash in those areas can be killed or become severely diseased. So we have to manage that in a way that doesn't destroy the landscape straight away, but takes account of those trees. The problem with the ash as they die is they become very weak in structure and very brittle, and they can just collapse at no apparent, it doesn't take a big wind to collapse them. So we have to look at that very closely. We try to remove the trees as they become heavily diseased, and our teams are constantly checking and looking across the areas. Last year, through the three major woodlands of Shantytown Park and Lymphad Wood, they did checks along all the pathways and tackled those areas where they felt trees might fail over the next year or so. Not so worried about in the centre of the trees, centre of the woods where people can't get to, but we have to remember and be aware of the safety to the public visiting the parks. So all this work that's going on, people ask us, does thinning and your tree work destroy the habitat? Well, if done properly, no. By opening up the light and the space, the understory, the shrubs, the new trees and the herbaceous layers can develop. They've got lights. We must remember that in these situations, light is king. The amount of biomass will actually expand rather than only being found in the top sections of those very spindly trees that are all fighting for the light, like in a unthinned seed tray. If you open the light up, you will get that biomass all the way through. The variety of habitats will also expand. As the shrubs develop, you'll get thickets for nesting and wildlife to refuge in, foods such as berries, and if herbaceous areas continue to develop, you'll get pollen for invertebrates, and then consequently food for the mammals and the birds that live off those invertebrates. So done properly, yes, the biodiversity and the habitat will increase. Now, to help those plantations continue to develop, in the woodlands we are carrying out underplanting of tree species to ensure that we do get those different age and size class in there. We're planting such tree species as hornbeam, small-leaf lime, field maple again, and yew, all of which are moderately shade tolerant, and as long as they have sunlight, they will grow up underneath that upper canopy that hopefully is offering them some dappled sunlight. On top of that, we continue to look for new planting areas and initiatives, and as David mentioned earlier on, we're very happy to be developing this area of wood meadow, which is a combination of wooded areas and wildflower meadows. And this phenomenon of actually having this mosaic of landscape style, actually, if you look at the design of Milton Keynes and you look at Camel Park, that's what's developing here. You've got the meadow in the centre of the park with all the lovely wildflowers, but you've also got the tree and the wooded areas around. And so that is a style that's actually with us, and all we're doing is looking to develop and work on that style, because again, where you've got the little areas where the wind can't get in, or the edges, it offers a fantastic habitat and transition opportunities, and also microclimates. Other initiatives we're doing, last year was a fantastic year for acorns. There was a lot of acorns produced on oak trees. It's called an oak mast year. Doesn't happen every year. And we saw that as an opportunity, and we were getting lots of people very interested in tree planting, and we put out a general appeal about, well, go into our major woodlands and gather some acorns and propagate them. And incredibly, it got reported back to us, in total there was over 4,000 acorns gathered and propagated. Incredible, all across Milton Keynes. And there's some there. That's just one person's collection, photograph they've sent to Christina, and the people are now keeping those little seedlings, because they're no longer acorns, little seedlings, for this next winter or the winter after, depending how quickly they grow, and then they'll be returning to us, and then we will be planting them in the woodlands and other areas. And this is also partly to compensate for the loss of the ash we're doing. So it's been a tremendous team effort, and we're really proud of that. So all in all, the plantations that perhaps didn't arrive naturally, they do need some help to develop, and they need to be appropriate to an urban setting. We think with all the measures we are putting in place, it will put our plantations in a good place for another 50 or 100 years or more. But, you know, it will cause some controversy. We're aware of that. We're not going to always please everyone who sees an area in front of them. But all we'd ask is people just to look at the bigger picture. You know, as someone mentioned earlier on, 6,000 acres of land, and we have to try and this incredible balancing act of serving the people, the wildlife, the people who live there, the visitors, and the basically the development of those woodlands and those landscapes. Just talking through some of the slides to support what I'm just talking about. That's just a lovely bit of woodland. I think that's Lymphadlakes Wood, where again you can see the various age classes that have been developed over the years. That's the poplar plantation. Trees quite planted quite tight together. Plantation been a good operative word there. Very little underneath it, and perhaps as time moves on, we'll look at areas like that to think, well, do we put areas of thicket? Again, wildlife refuge. You know, we realise there's a big increase in people and dogs, and perhaps we need to give the wildlife more of an opportunity just to somewhere sometimes disappear and hide until everyone's walked on by. Again, some thinning work, active work, where we've thinned out some of the trees. None of the wood goes to waste. That is either sold to as biomass or is sold firewood. or chipped and used and mulched to help the next generation of planting establish. And the final shot, that is an aerial shot of Linford Wood, and you can see the trees with no leaves on. Well, they are ash that are suffering from the dieback, so that just shows what an effect it is starting to have on some of our woodlands. And as I said, some of those trees will just be left to slowly deteriorate and collapse, but we can do that in the middle of the wood, but we can't do that where the paths are. So it needs a combination of management techniques. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rob, and thanks for all those who presented this evening. So that does conclude our presentations. We're now just going to move over to questions, and I'm just going to ask my colleagues in the management team if you could move up towards the front. We're going to be using the lectern to pop up and answer any questions you may have. We've had some already sent in to us, so I will be asking just a couple of those questions, and we'll also be checking via if we get anything in live as well just during this section. So just to start with, one of the most popular questions that we had been asked about was our use of glyphosate and what our policy is around that. So I'm just going to ask Rob if he could answer that one for us.
Me again, you just thought you got rid of me. Yes, an interesting one. We are and have been for a long time aware of the debate and concerns about how safe and appropriate is the use of glyphosate and other herbicides indeed. We believe the way we use it, we are not being detrimental to the environment or people alike. We don't overuse it. But we also have a programme to reduce our use and reliance on glyphosate and other herbicides. We realise that there's issues associated with it. But we have to remember that glyphosate is licensed in both the UK and Europe until December 2022, where it will undertake its usual 5-year review by the normal scientific bodies, and we will take our lead from them. We're not standing still. As I say, we are looking at ways of reducing our use. And in fact, we have those actions already in place, which I'll talk about in a minute. Glyphosate is licensed. Is designed to go into the plant via contact to the plant itself, and it blocks key enzyme pathways in the plant. These enzymes pathways are not found in humans or mammals. The herbicide actually breaks down when it goes onto the soil. So as a control, there's no point us putting the chemical on bare earth where there is no plant. So we only use it to spot spray it and spray it onto weeds we want to. Critics of glyphosate point out widespread use of glyphosate reduces biodiversity by killing plants that are essential to many insects and other animals. And yes, widespread use probably is detrimental to the wildlife and habitat. But as I said, we do not use it on a widespread nature. The main targets of our activities are formal or ground cover shrub beds through spot applications, a spot application on individual trees and grass. Now, and this is quite a common question. People say, well, why don't you let the grass grow around the trees? The problem is, in areas of cut grass, if you leave the grass grow around the trees, it can look quite ugly. But also, it encourages the mowers to go ever closer to the trees. And if you look at a lot of trees in Milton Keynes, and I'd suggest the Lombardy poplars along the boardwalk, most of them at one time or another suffered mower damage. So it's important to keep the mowers away. We used to call it, well, still do, Sheffield blight. You know, it's the steel. It can be as dangerous to the trees as anything. So we have to make sure that the mowers are away from the trees. We keep control of weeds on half surfaces, again through spot spraying. There's no point us spraying areas where there's no weed. And preparation of new planting beds to give those new plants the best chance, trying to get rid of the competition helps. Now we are taking measures to look at different ways of dealing with those actions. So some of the actions we're undertaking, we're looking at use of mechanical methods as alternatives to herbicides. And now a lot of the shrub beds, we go around the edge with strimmers. So we used to put a 30mm sort of weed-free band around these areas, but now we're actually finding it's easier to go around with strimmers. And as each contract is up for renewal, we look at that spec and try and look at bringing in that mechanical management. Mulching of new beds. So we use wood chip that we produce to mulch beds, and if we go down to Middleton, the wood meadow, the 1,500 or so plants we planted last year are all in a mulch. Our play area is the same. New play areas we've taken over, we use as a mulch. This also changes the texture and structure of the topsoil, and it means we can get hose in there, people can hand weed, whereas if it's a hard clay, it's damn hard to get the hoe in there. So we're trying to change the soils there to make it easier for alternative methods. We're now moving away from using glyphosate in play areas, and a lot of the new areas, certainly on the Broughtoners and Brooklands, the specs we're applying and we're costing for is no glyphosate. And moving on to the cost, one of the reasons the herbicide is so popular is because it's so effective. Over the years, it has been so effective for horticulturists and farmers who use it in a slightly different way to we do. And if we took it away overnight, it could be costing us £150,000 a year with the extra labour you would have to bring in. So we have to be aware of that. We also have to educate our contractors into new ways of thinking and working. We're looking at new systems, new developments, foam stream, which is a stream of a hot sort of biodegradable natural proteins that are put over the plant, but that involves lots of cables and stuff, which is probably not conducive to footpaths. But systems are developing. So yes, we are aware of the situation, and all I can say is we are looking at ways, and we have looked at ways of reducing our reliance on it, and we continue to do that. 2022 is going to be a big year because that's when all the big scientific bodies start reanalysing it and say, is it fit for use? And we will take more lead at that time.
Thanks, Rob. Just in interest of time, I'm going to open out to the audience now, so any questions you might like to ask, and if we have time, we'll come back to some of the ones that were sent in prior. Yes. Sorry, we've just got my colleague Emma will just come round with a mic so we can hear.
This is probably one for Steve. At what stage do the Parks Trust get into detailed discussions with developers in terms of the new parks and the planting and how it's going to be maintained? Is it done early enough? I'm thinking of Milton Keynes East, which is obviously at a very early stage at present.
Yeah, of course. So it does vary with developments, and ideally we'd like to get in there as early as possible on all of them. In terms of Milton Keynes East in particular, we have been in having good conversations with Berkeley, St James, for quite a few months now in the lead up to their outline planning application. So we have been working with them and built up quite a good relationship with them. But it does vary. Those areas that are within the existing expansion areas, we've had good contact with some of the developers there, but other areas that are popping up on a sort of more isolated basis is sometimes not so good. We would always encourage the council to point developers in our direction as early as possible, and we're working with the council on development frameworks and things like that. So there's work to be done in improving that to get in there as early as possible. But I would say in regards to Milton Keynes East, it's probably better than it has been with other developments recently. Yeah.
Thanks, Steve.
Hi. This concerns the new Bradwell bit of the Ouse Valley Park, where the Parks Trust extracted gravel a few years ago. The resulting hole has now filled up, become a lake, and part of the restoration was meant to include a footpath all the way around the lake, not at the shoreline, but some way back, so that wildlife wasn't disturbed. That was due, I think, to have been completed by either March of last year or March of this year, but either way, it hasn't happened yet. Is it going to happen, and if so, when?
Yes, Phil will answer this one.
Thanks, Alan. That's a good question. I'm in the final throes of discussions with Hanson for completing the restorations at the site. They have been delayed. I mean, partly they found more gravel in the land than they originally thought, so they've been able to extract more. That's actually enabled us to invest a lot more in green infrastructure. We use the income from that site to buy Lymphadlakes Nature Reserve, and it also enabled us to use some of the money for endowments where we took other land from the council around Stanton Low Park. So that money has all been put to really good use. So they found more gravel in the site, so that programme has extended. Also, as you probably know, they've suffered with a bit of flooding along the area over the past few years and through the lifetime of that extraction, and also Manor Farm, the floodplain forest. So that has put them back 2 or 3 years. So I'm in that last push with them. We know about the footpath. We are talking about that. They were due to do a big phase of work in there over this last winter. They just could not get in there. The ground was so saturated. Well, it was underwater. So yeah, we're pushing for that. And you know, I remember the time when we had the consultation and that discussion with you. So we'll try and make sure that's all done and finished as soon as possible, which hopefully will be this year or maybe early into next, depending on how they get on. Okay.
Thanks, Phil.
Last night, Milton Keynes Council unanimously supported a cross-party motion for the city or the town to apply for the city status competition that will be held as part of the Jubilee celebrations next year. And obviously, the Parks Trust is the jewel in Milton Keynes' crown, and none of the other applicants are going to have anything like the Parks Trust. So I'd just like to ask the trustees, of which I am one and myself, but I'm also a councillor, if we can make sure that we work hand in hand with the city to try and achieve that status for Milton Keynes, because, as I say, none of the other applicants will have anything like this.
Yes, absolutely. No, we will be very keen to work closely for that. I don't know if David had anything else he wanted to add at all, but no, we'll be very, very pleased to work closely. Thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah, hi, my question is around accessibility. Is there any maps or where you've got parks, and that some parks are quite hilly? So I'm thinking about from a walking point of view, where you've got a map where it lets you know whether the surface is flat to walk on or whether it's hilly. So those that have got walking problems can actually access those parks where they know there's flat surfaces.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So David mentioned that we're doing some work with the Centre for Integrated Living. The first piece that they're doing after they've advised us on Willen Lake is looking at Campbell Park. So they're helping us break down lots of different parts of how we can improve our information on accessibility, and one of them is about gradients in parks and walkways. So that what we'll do is use Campbell Park as a bit of a pilot for that information and start to look at what we can improve on our website, so you've got better information prior to visit, but also things like signage to help you on your way around the park to know when there might be a steep gradient. We can also look at street furniture, whether we need to put extra benches in, things like that. So that's all part of this piece of work that we're just underway at the moment. They're 90% through the audit findings, and then we'll be able to take those back and review them. Thank you. Any other questions? I think we have one from the live stream, so Christina.
Facebook has asked, are there any plans to improve the management of Lymphadlakes Nature Reserve for wildlife? And if so, what are they?
Phil, could I ask you to take that one?
Yeah, well, that's an interesting question because we know that Lymphadlakes Nature Reserve is probably probably the best
site for wildlife already in Milton Keynes. Partly that might be because there's an awful lot of recording that goes on down there. We've got fantastic groups of volunteers and other groups who come in and record all the wildlife that's down there. So we have very good records. We know how that site is used for wildlife. We bought the reserve in 2015, so we had to buy it. We used the money from the gravel. We did a deal with Hanson in it to buy the nature reserve and secure it for the future of Milton Keynes. It was previously operated by the council. They had massive budget pressures. So we bought it in 2015, and we've been progressively looking to, do more for wildlife down there. I mean, some of that does depend on good support from volunteers. We've got the Friends of Lymphadlakes Nature Reserve, who are a fantastic group, but of course their work's been really impacted over the last year. Well, they do some of the finer projects. They've built particular nesting areas for birds and those smaller projects, and we do want to build on that and work with them and really use that resource of volunteers to improve that sort of those smaller scale finer tuning projects for wildlife. Also, we've been doing quite a lot of work down there to try and improve the grassland habitats. We've reinstated sort of meadow management where that wasn't happening, where the grass is cut and the rising's removed, and we're putting sheep on those areas to graze it. That's all ongoing work. We are looking to review the management plan for the site, using that data that the volunteers produce, so that we can inform our future management and decide what really needs to be done. I mean, of course, I could stand here and talk about that site for hours and the wildlife down there. We very much, are really grateful that we managed to buy it, 5 or 6 years ago now, and we do want to maximise it for biodiversity. It's our only site actually where we have a permit system. We don't open it, free for public access. There is a permit system, so we can really enforce that message to visitors that when you go on the site, there are a set of rules. Please, enjoy the wildlife, but at the same time respect it. It's not a site for barbecues or riding bikes or flying kites. So, yeah, that's the sort of approach we're taking. And yes, we will be reviewing the management plan down there and trying to make it even better going forward.
Thanks. While you're up, Phil, actually, we had a question sent in prior to the meeting as well about whether the Trust will look at the prospect of a nature park or similar at Tickford Fields.
Tickford Fields, that's over the other side of Newport Pagnell. We have had some early discussions with Milton Keynes Council about that, but we realise that the Parks Trust isn't the only organisation across Milton Keynes that manages parks and green spaces. The council do. There is a big development over at Tickford Fields, and in that instance, the Newport Pagnell Town Council stepped in and they said they wanted to take the new parks and green spaces over there. I mean, in that case, that's great. If the Town Council want to step in, we will obviously support them. If they ever come to us for advice or anything, we're happy to help them. But in that instance, we have to respect that the Town Council wanted to do that. And that's great. We hope wish them every success. So we haven't got any particular plans for that development because we're not so involved in that particular one over in Tickford Fields.
Thanks, Phil.
Okay.
Can I just ask something? I actually sent in that question. So I would just like to add to that, because the lady over there was talking about the eastern side of Milton Keynes development and so on, which of course is taking in Newport Pagnell. So this is very relevant, and I'm from Newport Pagnell, so I declare all those vested interests. But yes, so I'm interested to hear that the Town Council in Newport Pagnell is taking that on board, by the sound of it. With your relationship with Hanson and so on, again, a lot of those lakes in Newport Pagnell are ex-Hanson or still owned by Hanson. And I think also the Anglian Water Authority have an area there of that ilk. So presumably you will be able to give your expertise, your knowledge from Lymphadlakes and so on to the council at Newport Pagnell, will you? Is that an ongoing situation?
We're not involved in any particular discussions at the moment, but with our document, clearly we want to spread those principles as widely as possible. Hopefully people know where we are. what we do and the sort of knowledge we've got and the expertise. So yes, if those organisations come to us, of course we'd help out. I mean, I have to say, one of the reasons we wanted to produce that document, if I just sort of fight the publish that as much as possible, is that there's no guarantee that parks and green spaces around Milton Keynes as they grow will be offered to the Parks Trust. You know, we are only a charity. Planning policy doesn't give the council the powers where a private developer is involved to have to hand new parks and green spaces to the Parks Trust or even to town and parish councils. Developers can make their own decisions. They can put their own arrangements in place. And, you know, we don't want that to happen. And that's one of the reasons why we're really pushing the principles in that document. So, sorry, I've sort of gone off on a bit of a tangent there. But it does, you know, there are a lot of different organisations potentially involved in that. Yes, you know, we are the biggest one looking after parks in Milton Keynes. People know where we are. Hopefully they'll come to us. Or we'll keep our ears to the ground and go out and offer advice if we feel it's appropriate for us to do so. Okay.
Thanks. Do we have any other audience questions? Before I just... Yes.
Not a question. I hope I left a sufficient gap for people to ask questions. This is more of a comment. I was referred to earlier as having left David's shoes for him in 2003, and I just think it's worthwhile commenting just how heartened I personally am at the huge progress this body has made in those 18 years. There's many ways. There's many ways that it can be illustrated, but its business plan to start with is just amazing. When the Parks Trust started, it had assets of 20 million. When I left in 2003, it had 50 million. Now you're at 130 million. Brilliant. Well done. Carry on the good work. Be under no illusions, though. I think you're going to need these resources and you're going to have to build them up even more. I think some of the challenges ahead are immense. It's interesting that we haven't had one mention tonight of net zero or sequestration. Sequestration of carbon is going to be probably the number one item of the agenda of the next 30 years. Many of those years I'm unlikely to witness personally, but I'd like to think that this institution is going to be waving the flag for sequestration. The portents are good. Rob has assured us that the biodiversity of the subsoils are being increased all the time, and that is the secret, not just here in Milton Keynes, but is needed worldwide. I'd love to think that you are to become a blueprint for others. I'm not too sure how you do that, because your performance has been extremely good, but the acknowledgement of that performance seems to be not respected in wider circles outside Milton Keynes. And I'm a little bit worried about what's happening in Newport Pagnell already, that another organisation is wanting to do similar things, when I think you can do it so well and you've got the facilities to do it. If it's going to be repeated locally, I worry about resources being diverted. So I think your new document is a brilliant idea. I'm saddened to hear the fact that the council, through its planning powers, cannot get developers to do the proper thing. And we've got so many examples around of bad practice. Fortunately, they are small, so they don't show up as big scars currently. But those little pimples of problems should somehow be more widely documented so that we can see where things are going wrong and democratic processes can intervene to try and get this green dream of Milton Keynes that so many of us have invested in to be more readily accepted in the nation and hopefully more widely. So all I can say is well done, the lot of you, trustees, David, all the staff, most of whom I do not know now. I still know Rob, for recruited him as a boy, for goodness sake. And I do hope that you maintain your progress and your principles in very tricky times ahead. Good luck.
Thank you. Thanks very much. There's some really good points in there. Lots of work for us to do, as we know, and we hope that launching the new landscape proposition will be a good start to help us lobby further afield and to cover many of the points that you just mentioned. So thank you very much. Conscious of time, so we are going to look to wrap up now. We had a few more questions sent in to us. We will make sure they're answered. We will do that via our social media and the media that we publish after the meeting. Thank you all very much for attending. It was really lovely to see you all in person, and thanks for those who joined our live stream too. Thank you very much.